Hey guys, it's Girl Got Game here with my final thoughts on Steam Prison. To say it took me a while to get my thoughts in order is a definite understatement, but before getting into the really difficult stuff, let's start off with just my thoughts on the game as a whole first. So to begin, I thought this game was absolutely awesome. It definitely had a much darker and serious tone than I was expecting. To say this game didn't shy away from serious, sensitive, and gruesome topics would be a true understatement. As such, I would totally understand if this is not everyone's cup of tea, and or they might find a few things in this game potentially triggering as well. For example, things such as rape, dismemberment, terrorism, human experimentation, and so on. I would definitely caution anyone who told me they were interested in checking this out that it deals with some serious subject matter. But that being said, this game also definitely had wonderful moments of humor and romance. And I personally have to say I was rather impressed that the game didn't shy away from any of the gruesomeness that exists in this world. Very little, if anything, was glossed over, and you truly felt like this was a corrupt system that had serious flaws, no matter whether you lived in the Heights, the Sanctuary District, or the rest of the depths. While each section had its own villains and agendas, there was definitely some bleed-through that was happening in the other sections as well, which was really well done. Also, the gradual world-building and different plot points being progressively revealed to help put the puzzle pieces together, building up to the grand end, was very well done. Because of the different areas Cyrus lives in dependent on the route, different areas of corruption that are highlighted, as well as the guys themselves and their very distinct personalities and agendas, each route felt super unique, while also tying together things we learned from other routes. I also want to say I absolutely adored the addition of seeing things from the guys' perspectives on their routes, as well as a couple of the other characters too. I thought that was excellent, because you could see scenes through someone else's eyes and really learn a lot about their relationships and personality based on those moments. I wish more games would do something like that because it really adds a lot to the characters and the story, and I thoroughly enjoyed that part of the writing very much. So I definitely have to say, while I would urge some caution going into this based on the subject matter, I would also wholeheartedly recommend this game as well. If for nothing else, then for the writing especially. But the writing's not the only thing great about this game. The art is awesome as well. This is yet another game that has a huge variety of backgrounds, which includes the lighting changing depending on the time of day, as well as many sprite poses and facial expressions. And of course, so many of the CGs were absolutely gorgeous, and there's a good variety of them for each love interest. The number of CGs for each of them is also very consistent. There wasn't any character that had way more than others, and vice versa. There wasn't anyone who had very little. Even Finn, who was only added as DLC, had just as many CGs as the other guys, so that was something I really appreciated as well. And finally, the music. Just like with the art, there's a huge variety in the music. Each guy has their own beautifully crafted theme, as well as each section of the world. There were quite a few themes that gave me strong Kingdom Hearts and Final Fantasy vibes, so needless to say, I thought the music was really beautiful and suited the setting of this game perfectly. And before I move on to the really hard part of this video, I want to talk about my thoughts on the character we spent the most time with, which of course would naturally be our protagonist, Cyrus Stella. My feelings towards Cyrus are a bit mixed, but overall I do like her. She is a very naive MC, but I do appreciate that they at least give an in-world reason for why she is that way. First of all, she is young, being only 18, and she has been raised in a very repressed and strict society by parents who have held that view her entire life. So her naivete makes sense as far as it comes to romance. She's definitely not naive in other ways. For instance, she's a very accomplished sword fighter already, and has shown on numerous occasions that she can read a situation and take out several enemies on her own with her sword fighting skills. She also has an extreme sense of justice, which I honestly admire about her, even though her rigidness on that often gets her into trouble. But I did like that there were many times she knew, going in, that this was going to make things more difficult for her. Yet, she went through it with it anyway because it was still the right thing to do. And I honestly really admire her for following through with her beliefs no matter the personal cost. There were a couple times in the story that Cyrus makes mistakes in judgment and gets into obvious traps, but I know a lot of that is for the sake of moving the story along more than anything. If there was anything that really bothered me about Cyrus, it's that her understanding of sex is very wishy-washy depending on the situation. It seems that if it involves a guy she likes, she'll have zero idea about anything to do with that. Her understanding is basically on par with that of a very young child, but in other cases, such as with talking with Rylith, or in a near-rape situation either of Cyrus herself or others she observes, she seems to have a much clearer understanding. I mean, I personally would hope that Mom would have chatted to Cyrus about this, considering she was getting married in very short order before all of this went down. Maybe that's not what happened, but anyways, the disconnect there often threw me and took me out of the story when it happened. And other than that, I feel like Cyrus is often very stiff. Granted, that seems to stem from her very justice-oriented personality, but she very rarely ever allowed herself to relax. Always faithful and always on guard is our girl. Of course, that did mean those rare occasions where she teased or laughed were special too, because they didn't happen all that often. So yeah, other than those couple nitpicky things, I really enjoyed Cyrus as a protagonist, and I did appreciate her having this defined personality. Alright, and with that out of the way, it is time yet again for the hardest part of these videos, to finalize my boys list. And as always, this is based on the whole shebang with these guys: personality, plot, romance, etc. And then afterwards I'll have a couple auxiliary lists as well, so let's get straight into it, going from least favorite to most favorite. At the bottom of my list is a type of guy I thought would never be at the bottom of one of my lists, so this is a rarity for me. Regrettably, Mr. Eltcreed Valentine is at the bottom of my list. Now, I will say that I adore Eld as a character. I mean, he is the flirty narcissist pasta boy, after all, what's not to love? And funnily enough, I really love him more when not romancing him. He's one of the characters that has made me laugh the most with his bombastic, over-the-topness. And I always have a goofy grin on my face when his tango theme starts playing and he shows up, especially if he has Ulrich in tow. For such a jovial guy, he does have a rather cold and brutal side to him as well. But you don't get to rule your own district at 25 without some brutal maneuvers, I'd wager. It was always a dose of cold water whenever Eld would switch from his usual warm, generous, rather full of himself personality to the cold, calculated side that could slice someone's finger off without blinking if necessary. I did like that those moments were always shown as him taking no satisfaction in what he was doing, but recognizing it was a necessary evil to protect what he cares about, though, so I thought that was well done. And of course, being the flirt, he had some very aggressive flirting and romance scenes, but those usually made me feel as uncomfortable as Cyrus when they happened. I do appreciate from his perspective, he was actually holding back a lot because he viewed Cyrus as special compared to other women he's dated. So I appreciated that, but he's honestly just too much for me to handle. Yes, you've heard it right. I actually found a flirty narcissist boy who's too much for me to handle, if you can believe it. And I think it must have been the power dynamic between him and Cyrus that really threw me off there, with him employing her and her being very dependent on him for her livelihood and living situation. It's not a very balanced relationship for the two, unfortunately, but they did have their share of great moments, to be sure. My favorite has to be her knocking some sense into him with a sword when he was going to carry out a suicidal bomb attack, all in the name of protecting his city, so thankful the girl talked sense into him that he can't take care of a city if he's dead, and to stand up to those taking advantage of him. Love a girl who fights for her boy like that. And of course, the fact that his own father had married a woman banished from the Heights, and Eld's obsession with knights as a kid was very cute backstory for why he was enamored with Cyrus so much too. And as far as his actual plot, it was pretty interesting. It gave us some good starting info for how things are run in the rest of the depths, as well as showcasing how unhinged our old partner Finn becomes due to being sent to the Hounds after our sentence, which set the tone for our interactions with him going forward. This is also the only ending where we really align ourselves with the Hounds and Sox and Brandenburg, which led to an extremely interesting agreement that I think will actually benefit Libra Elitas and the Hounds very well. And of course, seeing Sox and Cyrus actually fight on the same side for a while was a treat too. Noya Temperans as an antagonist was pretty solid as well. Aside from the grand ending, this is the only route he shows up in, but he was sufficiently bad guy enough with his cool eye patch and final showdown with El to take over his district, so all in all, a very solid route from start to finish, but unfortunately the power imbalance between Elt and Cyrus made for a lot of uncomfortable moments for me, and I think I'd much rather be Elt's friend / bodyguard than his girlfriend. Sorry, dude. But I am grateful for the kissing lessons and what they mean, because I am keeping that list and taking it to future games, so thank you for that, if nothing else, Elfcreed. Next on my list, I'd have to put Ulrich Fairy. Gosh, I love that tsundere butt so much. It simultaneously pains me to put him so low on my list, while also gives me some comfort that at least he's close to his bro Elt. What to say about Ulrich? He's a snarky tsundere boy who's extremely good at gathering info from anywhere and about anyone, and he would rather eat candy and read a good book in solitude than do anything else, really. How can you not love him? I thought he and Cyrus had very good chemistry. Being the same age, both being employees of the same guy, and having basically the same level of understanding regarding romance put them on very even ground in the dating department. I loved that they were experiencing a lot of firsts together. First date, first holding hands, first kiss. It was all just so good. And how can you not fall for a guy who takes you to his secret underground library to read a romance book, walks you home, and then lends you said book when he never lends books of any kind to anyone under no circumstances? Gosh, my heart was so full after that. And of course, winning the trust of someone who, by nature and circumstance, is super distrustful of others. Not to mention the prejudice against those from the Heights is just super satisfying and heartwarming as well. So yeah, definitely enjoyed these two goobers as a couple. Ulrich did have a couple of stupid, questionable moments in judgment during his route, though. Especially early on when he just blabs about Cyrus's origin to his terrorist buddies and then doesn't stick around to hear what awful plans they're making about her. Like, dude, I get you really don't like her at this moment, but if nothing else, how could you do your bro Elt dirty like that? And even if it was a lapse in judgment, when you mentioned her, at least stick around to hear the evil plans, Mr. Information Gatherer, and don't just go to sleep, my goodness, boy. Ugh. I also think Ulrich may have had the weakest plot out of all the guys. We did get introduced to an underground terrorist group that wanted to bring the Heights down regardless of consequences to lives, either up top or below in the depths when that sucker came down. And Vice as an antagonist was slightly more memorable than Noya Temperans from Elt's route, to be sure, but also not as interesting. Rafala really did make themselves a nuisance more than anything. Again, a very solid plot though, and it did expand details yet again for us by explaining the importance behind Ulrich's lineage, as well as giving us an idea of how precarious the Heights situation really is. It also really showcased and explained the bond between Elt and Ulrich, which was awesome. I love their bromance so much. It's easily one of my favorite things in this game, so getting the history and the background on how it all started here was a delight. I definitely really enjoyed Ulrich's route, and if anything, the reason why his route's so low is solely because I just enjoyed other guys and their routes more, so sadly Ulrich falls here on my list. So, coming in at number 4, I'd have to put Ines Heinrich Heine, our noble vice commander of the Hounds. I'll be honest and say I really wasn't expecting a lot from this guy when we started, but he definitely more than exceeded my expectations. Not only personality-wise, but also route-wise. Personality-wise, I'd say Ines is easily one of the best matches for Cyrus. They really are two peas in a pod when it comes to dedicating their lives to justice. You can really see how similar they are in their thoughts in Ines' afterstory as well. Lots of instances of them having the same thought about the same thing. Ines' comments about her being like a little sister notwithstanding, I can see why these two fell for each other. There was definitely a bit of a slow burn here. Not really from Cyrus, surprisingly, but from Ines. Cyrus fell pretty quick for this guy. Ines took a little more convincing to realize it was love, but when he did, he sure moved quick in that elevator at the end. Whoo-hoo! And then route-wise, I really enjoyed the plot of Ines' route. I had been wondering for a while exactly how we were going to spend time with a guy who's one of our jailers, basically. But the idea of him going to Cyrus for political advice to further his goals of returning to the Heights to avenge his partner was something I was not expecting. It worked out perfectly, though. The two ended up spending a lot of time together, learning about each other because of it. Plus, it also resulted in cooking lessons for our girl, and seeing her so proud of her omelet was super cute. I also loved our girl's Mulan moment of cutting her hair off so she could blend in and join Inez on his mission. The final showdown with Sox, getting a ton of backstory on Sox and Inez with the former commander of the Hounds, Thea, finding out Fitzgerald was our parents' murderer, finding out Cordoa and the police in the Heights are just as corrupt, if not more so, than the Hounds down below. Our girl and boy standing back to back and fighting for justice together against Cordoa and the corrupt police force. That spicy kiss in the elevator down. Ugh. I absolutely adored that the two of them are working together to reform the Hounds instead of staying in the Heights, which also means they're free to love each other. Oh, and of course, before I forget, there was also the whole star-crossed lovers thing with him being the police officer who inspired her to become one herself when she was a girl because of him finding her pendant. Just, oh man, there's just so much to love with the story in Inez's route. The only weird thing that happened is that Glissade just decided to peace out partway through for reasons unknown, and I'm still super confused by why that was. I don't know if they were just like, well, we don't want any negative energy around when Inez and Cyrus go back to take over the Hounds or what, but anyway, other than that small niggly part, I love this route, and Inez forever fills me with a sense of safety and dependability whenever he's around. Alright, getting to our top 3 now, coming in at number 3, I'd have to give that to Finn Euclase, our old partner and light in the darkness. Yes, our DLC boy managed to sneak into my top 3, and for good reason. I gotta say, I'm still kind of flabbergasted that Finn wasn't a love interest from the very beginning. The romance feels between him and Cyrus were so freaking heavy-handed in the common route section, especially when she says goodbye to him right before being sent down. I'm sorry, but telling someone they're your light in the dark and the home you will return to is not something you say to your platonic work buddy. Don't at me. Now, of course, pre-DLC, Finn did have feelings for our girl. Feelings that were unfortunately twisted and warped by the horrific experiences he underwent thanks to his Hounds training. We had some pretty not nice experiences with him before getting to his route proper, and I was super intrigued by how they were going to handle Finn's yandariness, but I think they came up with a great solution for him. Just have it that he doesn't go through the torture training, so he stays more or less the sweet lovely boy we all fell in love with in the very beginning. Of course, a little of the obsessiveness comes to play once or twice, like when Finn really goes for the smooch with our girl, or when he stands up to Sox, so I'm glad they didn't completely erase that part of Finn's personality, but showed it still there, just not exacerbated this time around. All in all, though, the boy's mostly a big old bean who worships the ground Cyrus walks on and has the patience of a saint. Possibly patience greater than a saint if talking about Yune, actually. Now, the reason Finn's only number 3 is simply because not much happens in his story, which is to be expected considering it was added in after the fact. Everything was pretty solid, though. Sox as the main antagonist made sense, and it was neat having our girl be the one to work for the Hounds this time around, but the overall story is not pushed forward in any way, and character stories are not really expounded on all that much either. But I did absolutely love that the story ended with Finn and Cyrus making their way to Libralitas in the end, without taking care of those two goobers and helping them to have a life all their own. Not to mention these two actually got freaking married, which was so wonderful. I'm only sad I missed the wedding, but otherwise I definitely couldn't ask for a happier ending for these two. Alright, and now we're at number 2, which I have to give to our Saint Bro, Yune Sekie. This ranking was a bit of an unexpected one for me, but the more I thought about it, the more I couldn't rationalize putting him lower. Maybe part of it is the hype I had going into this particular boy's route. I was so excited to see how romancing a saint was going to go, and I have to say Yune definitely didn't disappoint. I think his route may have been one of the most fun for me, while simultaneously also pulling on my heartstrings a lot too. Yune is such a tragic figure once you learn his backstory. Boy's got an insane amount of survivor's guilt, being the only one left alive who lived on the surface before the flood happened, and has watched society develop since then. It's only very recently that he's been revered as a saint, too. Before the flood, and for quite a while afterwards, he was treated as a freak and a monster, and he was living on the street hoping death might find him somehow, even though the stone in his chest wouldn't even let him starve to death. But as soon as he got a chance to fulfill his promise to his brother Arson Klein, he took it, and became the puppet figurehead for a corrupt government. Now, of course, the argument could be made that this boy should have pushed for more change once he did get his position in government, but Yune really is just a figurehead. There's very little he can actually do, and when he did try to actually make a change, the Heights literally threw him down to the depths without a second thought. So I personally don't blame him for any of the rot that set in, since I feel that was already well established in the system before he got to where he is. And of course, since this route was so politically focused, none other than Warner Evans was our antagonist. I thought he was a very good antagonist, not just in this route, but in the game as a whole. I mean, I knew he was to blame for everything, and there were still moments in this route where I was questioning myself, like, maybe he's just being blackmailed, or maybe it's Fitzgerald and not him, just because he'd say or do something kind once in a while. But his true colors of greed and corruption came through in the end, and I really hope everything crashed and burned around him eventually. And then romance-wise, I gotta say that I really wasn't expecting romance to grow between these two, because this guy was like, ah, she's a true heartless monster having murdered her own parents. She's the perfect candidate to end my miserable existence. But hey, it worked out in the end. I will say, especially from Yune's side, I absolutely bought his gradual falling for her. I will say I think he kind of ran with that feeling, since he was very excited by the prospect of love being the thing to actually kill him. But then seeing the gradual change from being desperate to die to then being like, I love this girl and I want to spend as much time as I can with her. Even though I know this feeling is what will kill me in the end because the Godstone won't keep me alive anymore, I still would happily give it up to be with the one I love for however long I have. Just, man, my heart. I absolutely adored that so much. I will say that the feelings were not as clear on Cyrus's side for some of this, but I really got the depth of her feelings more so in the bittersweet endings and the afterstory especially. Then I really bought it from her side as well. Also, shout out to this boy for having the worst cliffhanger going into the credits out of everybody with a super long epilogue. And shout out as well for having endings that made me laugh and also made me cry from a broken heart. This boy gave me the full roller coaster of emotions, and for that he definitely earned his number 2 spot. And finally, coming in at number 1 to nobody's surprise is everyone's favorite doctor, Adage. I will say that I had a wee bit of a predisposition towards this boy going into this game, since I did think he was the most attractive, but I was really unprepared for how much I was going to fall for him. I think I must have been in a very particular mood between this game and Changeling, because I'm just realizing my number 1 guy in both games is a rude asshole who's very passionate and hides himself away in other routes and stays hidden even for some of his own. That's a very particular box to fit into. And I can't believe I found not 1, but 2 guys to fit in it. But here we are. Anyway, Adage. What can I say? I mean, he's great. He made me laugh, he made me cry, sometimes both at the same time. I was not expecting such a vicious tease from this guy because he comes across so serious, but boy is literally just a 24/7 horn dog who can't get his girl off his mind. Despite Adage's protestations, I will continue to believe that he fell for this girl the moment he saw her, and that's why he offered her a place to stay with him, and no one can convince me otherwise. And as for our girl, she fell for this devil pretty quickly, I must say. I really liked that she developed the feelings for him completely on her own, thought she was sick, and then had to get diagnosed by our doctor boy to discover what was ailing her. I honestly think my favorite part of this route was just the overall domesticness, if that's a word, of it. I mean, of course, a big part of that is because Adage just pretended so early on that he and Cyrus were actually married. purely to avoid the nonsense of people insinuating as much anyways later on, naturally, of course. But I loved that Cyrus played into it, often leading to hilarious moments, such as her bragging about her prowess in bed compared to the poor doctor. That was just mwah. And these two really had a good banter and working relationship, and I sensed a lot of respect between the two, which made for a good partnership between them. I also loved that Cyrus wasn't afraid to tell Adage when he was acting like a muppet, and also seeing how much Adage opened up to Cyrus about his past was just so heartwarming. And aside from the romance aspect, this route hands down had my favorite plot. We really got to know our other doctor, heavy air quotes implied. He was our antagonist with this route because, plot twist, he's actually our dear boy's good-for-nothing psycho father. It absolutely broke my heart learning about how Glissade abandoned his son and viewed him as recessive in favor of this Franken daughter he created out of discarded children in the Heights. Learning about that part of the society was dark in itself, but then getting into the whole human experimentation and mutilation aspect of the route was a turn I really wasn't expecting. It was done extremely well, and I've never felt more satisfied seeing a man burned to death for his crimes. Couldn't happen to a better person, really. Of course, there was some doubt there for a while with our girl, since Adage did under pretense join with his old man for a little while to see if he could be saved at all. But I'm so relieved he did realize the truth and saved his girl instead. There was also the scary moment where he was almost executed for killing his father, but luckily our boy was able to stay alive, and actually expanded his practice to include the hounds now. And if nothing else, there at least will be no further murders and mutilations of women and children in the Sanctuary District with Adage and Cyrus at the reins. So needless to say, with how thoroughly I enjoyed the plot and the romance in this route, this was an easy number 1 for my list. And there you have it, my final ranking of the routes for Steam Prison. But as always, there be bonus awards, so let's get into those as well. Starting off first with a list of the guys based purely on their chemistry with Cyrus. For this, I again would have to put Elt at the bottom. While Elt definitely is head over heels for her, it always feels like Cyrus doesn't know whether she's standing upright or is upside down when she's around him. I think she has a lot of respect for Elt and a genuine fondness, but romantic feelings is something she always feels pushed towards from him, instead of it being more genuinely felt on her part. After Elt, I'd have to put Yune. Again, while I really feel the strong feelings from Yune towards Cyrus, I don't feel it as much from her in his main route. I definitely think she has a fondness towards him, almost like a protective mother. I will say in other ends and the after-story stuff, I definitely do buy love from Cyrus too, but in the main route / ending for this boy, I'd have to say it's more one-sided on Yune's part, so that's why he's down here on this particular list. After Yune, I'd have to list Ulrich. He and Cyrus are very much on equal footing romance-wise, and seeing them both pushed out of their comfort zone by Elt's encouragement is so sweet to see. There definitely is genuine feelings on both sides. Cyrus definitely has to be very patient with Ulrich though, with his trust issues, but she's more than happy to earn his trust, and obviously he cares a lot about her with how he opens up to her over time. I also love that they both look out for each other in ways that the other is lacking. A top-notch team, these two. At number 3, I'd put Adage. He and Cyrus definitely give off old married couple energy and complement each other so nicely. They're like two puzzle pieces that somehow fell next to each other and fit perfectly together. I like how they both bring out each other's mischievous sides, but they also can seriously work together to accomplish whatever they need to as well. Number 2 definitely has to go to Inez. Girl fell for this boy hard and fast. He was a little slower on the uptake, but once he realized the depth of his own feelings, boy really went for it with her. And these two are just so similar, and I feel they're perfect partners for each other emotionally. Neither of them is in any hurry to move things along romantically too quickly, but they're definitely in it for the long haul and have a wonderful comfort level with each other. And at number 1, it has to go to Finn. They've been partners for 2 years, and I feel like they probably fell in love with each other around the same time. It's just that Cyrus dismissed the feelings, whereas Finn nurtured them privately. Having spent so much time with each other, they truly understand each other well. I'd argue that Finn probably understands Cyrus more than Cyrus understands Finn, but she definitely inspires him to be the best version of himself he can be, and it's obvious how much she cares for him. And for my final list, routes in order of my favorite plots, least to most, and this will include the grand ending this time around. So at the bottom, I'd probably put Finn. Unfortunately, being DLC, Finn's story really didn't play into much development of anything. It was really just a story to make a situation where Finn and Cyrus could properly explore their feelings for each other, and that was basically it. It was also a lot shorter of a route compared to the others, but that was probably good not to drag things out too much there, so that was okay. But yeah, in comparison to the others, Finn's definitely felt the weakest to me plot-wise. After Finn, I'd say Ulrich, just because Weiss really had so little role to play ultimately in the story, and we never really revisited the invention that controls the stability of the heights again. And I am bothered by how a smart boy like Ulrich made some very questionable decisions that not only put our girl in danger, but Eld especially. It felt out of character for me at times, and made it hard to buy into some of the plot points that played out. After Ulrich, I would probably put Inez. While I liked the way the plot played out with Cyrus teaching Inez about the heights and the two of them working together to solve their respective mysteries, I felt like their time in the heights was very rushed in comparison to getting up there. The pacing felt pretty good until the night where he tells her he wants her to join him, and then it seems to just ramp up, go very fast from there. I would have liked a little more time with them both investigating up top, personally. After Inez, I would put Elfried. Elfried had a pretty involved plot laying out the feelings between the heights and the depths, and I found Eld's political views and ways he led his district super interesting. While I liked the progression of his good ending over his best ending, I still liked that we were able to snap him out of his suicidal depression and convince him of how needed he is, as well as our working together with the Hounds to run the ne'er-do-wells of Temperantia and Rafala out of Libralitas. That was very satisfying. And then coming in at number 3, I would put Adage. I've kinda gushed already about why I liked his route, but learning that Glissade was ultimately responsible for our parents' murder and us being sent down, as well as his crazy human experimentation, was so well done. And of course, it was satisfying to get vengeance against him too in the best ending, so well done all around. At number 2, I'd put Yune. There was so much cool, mysterious, mystic stuff going on with our boy and his route. Learning that it was actually a sentient godstone that fell in love with this boy and kept him alive and unharmed for centuries was super cool to learn about little by little. Plus, it was so heartwarming when Sekie decided of their own accord to let Yune go and be happy instead of fighting bitterly until the end. I was so proud. I also think this is the ending that Yune's the happiest in. He finally gets to go home, no longer burdened by his survivor's guilt and being a puppet in a corrupt government. He also is slowly reintegrating with his family, in a way, slowly earning Ulrich's tolerance and hopefully trust one day. Either way, though, I know Yune's just thrilled that Arson Climb's line didn't die out as he had feared for so long. And finally, at the top, I actually did put the grand ending here. It was definitely a culmination of all these great routes, and if for no other reason, I have to give it the number 1 spot since we had the awesome plot twist of actually avoiding our parents' murder. I was so happy we actually got to save them. And we still got to meet all these awesome guys and meet with them regularly, with Cyrus not having to lose her home and having the freedom to learn love on her own terms and pace with whoever she wants, while also exploring more of the world at large, bringing justice wherever she goes. A truly satisfying ending. And now for some fun bonus award once again. Yay! Best Pose Award, for me, goes to Ulrich for his sly smile looking back at us pose. It's so cheeky and mischievous, I just love it. Next award is for Favorite CG. This was a really tough one with all the gorgeous ones in this game. I had to pick between 5 in the end that I really liked, but I ended up deciding that Yune's ghost bad ending CG was my favorite. The lighting of it, the way you can only see his ghostly smile, Cyrus's look of hope and sadness as she looks back at him is just so beautiful, I had to pick it. Next award is for my favorite bad ending, which hands down has to go to Adage's bad end number 4, Follow Me. This was literally just an alternate start to Adage's best end route in my opinion, So I definitely love that. Most disturbing bad ending goes to Elcrade's bad ending number 2, Sweet Recompense. Getting raped by Finn in front of Elt's dead body is still something that haunts me to this day. Definitely not my favorite ending by any means. Saddest bad ending was a tough one for me between one of Yune's and one of Enos's, but I ended up giving this one to Yune since Enos's bad ending did have a happy-ish ending overall, whereas Yune's is definitely just bittersweet, sad throughout. And that's Yune's bittersweet end number 2. Let's meet again. Not only with them saying goodbye so he doesn't die, but then him not making it in time to say his final goodbye to Cyrus was so heart-wrenching. It had to go to him. Favorite best ending also has to go to Yune. I just like the bittersweet happiness aspect of it so much. I can't help but hope the Heights will deteriorate more than they thought they would without their symbol. And of course, Yune doesn't have much longer to live, but he's really making the most of it and is enjoying life for the first time in centuries, so definitely my favorite. The funniest scene in the game award has to go to Adage with his "I really will fuck you this time" line. I nearly fell out of my chair with that line. Adage's route was full of lines that got me laughing, but that one broke me as a person. I do want to give honorable mentions to any time Eld and Ulrich are sharing a scene together though, because those two and their banter back and forth produced a ton of funny gems as well. And I do want to shout out Socks for his "What is this tea party?" line too. There were so many funny moments in this game, honestly. It was hard to pick. But Adage's definitely got me the most. Favorite short stories has to go to Elcrede, actually. Learning even more of his backstory and getting more Eld Ulrich feels was wonderful. I definitely felt like his short stories had the most content to them. And for favorite after story, that has to go to Adage. It was such a wholesome after story, plus I freaking loved that they had scary music on Adage's side for the cockroaches and happy-go-lucky music on Cyrus's side of the same scene. That was just perfection. Absolutely awesome. Favorite Cyrus outfit? For me, it has to be her servant outfit in Yune's route. It was like a more tailored version of her police outfit with little hints of pink in there too. I thought it really suited her. And of course it had the most important thing for Cyrus, pants. So how could I not pick that? Favorite side character has to go to Merlot, the sweetie. I'm still so sad that no matter the ending, you can't save him or his mom. They were both so kind and deserved so much better. Most useless side character award has to go to Sankabold Ark. I still have zero idea why this character is in this game. He was just a condescending guy who ended up being kinda sort of alright in the few routes he showed up, but he has literally no purpose to play in any of the endings and we learn nothing about him. A true enigma, that character. I feel he could have had any number of random policemen fill his role and got the same result in the end. Sorry, Sankabolt. Favorite antagonist is a tie for me between Socks and Glissade. While I personally like Socks as a character over Glissade, I would be remiss not to have Glissade here since he was an extremely well-written antagonist as well. While with Socks I have complicated feelings towards him, love to hate him, hate to love him, kind of thing, depending on the route and the ending. With Glissade I know very strongly where I stand with him, and that's because they wrote him as a complete psychopath. He comes across as so caring and meek when you first meet him, but holy heck does that thin veneer cover up a messed up personality. I thought they did an excellent job with his backstory, and of course you can't help but have more personal feelings toward him considering he's Adage's no-good father, grrr. So there you go. And then my award for most useless antagonist has to go to Vice. And I will be honest with you all, I added this award in purely because I wanted to give this award to Vice in the useless side character award section, but I also wanted to include Sankabold Ark in this as well, so that's the reason this award came into existence. But seriously, I don't understand this guy's purpose either. He was capable enough as an antagonist in Ulrich's route, sure, but I'm so confused why he was deemed important enough to get his own short story? Is it just because of his gorgeous heterochromia eyes? Because honestly, I don't get it otherwise. I think every other antagonist featured in the grand ending in some way, but there's not even a mention or a whisper of Vice or Rafala in the grand ending, which is so strange. So, congrats, I guess, Vice. You made me make you a custom award just for you because you confuzzled me so much. And finally, my last bonus award, Best Character Theme. That definitely goes to Adage. The only bad thing about his theme is we don't hear it nearly as much as the other guys' themes, but it is so beautiful. Definitely my favorite piece out of all the music in this game. And those are all the bonus awards I could come up with. I hope you enjoyed listening to my rambling final thoughts on this awesome game. I would definitely recommend it if you're looking for a game with a darker tone. I would, however, recommend getting the Switch version over the PC version. While the PC's version is better now with the latest update compared to when I started this game, the Switch's version is still much, much better integrated, plus it has more content than the PC version. There's custom ending songs for each of the guys sung by the VA for them. I think that's the addition that hands down I'm most sad didn't make it into the latest update for the PC version. Darn it all. There's also, I think, another section of after stories for each of the guys too, involving the night before everyone's wedding, like Cyrus's wedding to the guy. That's what I heard anyways. But there are definitely extra after stories either way though. And you'll save yourself a headache regarding what's unlocked, what's not unlocked if you go with the Switch version over the PC version. But hey, that's just my personal recommendation though. Alright! With that, I would love to hear what you guys thought as well, what your thoughts were, how your list or lists ended up looking. And if you'd like to do these bonus awards as well, or have some bonus awards of your own, I would love to hear it. And so, we wrap up another game series and move on to New Horizons finally! Ah, so exciting! Now, if you're on my Discord, you already know what games are coming up, but for the YouTube peeps, I'm excited to tell you that the next two games I'll be playing are Psychedelica of the Black Butterfly, and Taisho Alice in that order. So we'll be jumping into Psychedelica of the Black Butterfly next time I see you guys. And I can't wait to see what shenanigans we'll be getting into now. Hope to see you all there, and also hope you enjoyed my review of this game too. Thanks so much for watching, as always, and until next time, I will see you later.